For people who haven't seen this, can you talk about a recent event you had to deal with where you decided to challenge your own congresswoman about stuff? I don't want to give anything away. What led to you getting super politically active? What happened when you tried to confront her about it?
Well, I started getting more politically, talking more about more politics on my channel and the things we need to do. And I noticed as the presidency was occurring in the first few weeks, things were happening very fast. And so I was like, we got to do something. We need to get out there. We need to be calling our representatives. And I was listing off all these things that we need to be doing. And I'm like, I can't just sit on the internet and talk about it. I see that a lot. We're all just kind of sitting here saying, this is bad. We got to do something. And nobody's doing anything. So to me, I was like, I need to walk the walk. I need to actually model it and tell people about my experience and encourage them and inspire them to do the same thing. So it started with me calling my local representative, Diana Harshbarger, who is a Trump loyalist. And
And
I
what
just
state
kind of,
is this in for people who may not have
this
heard
is
of
in
her?
Tennessee, District 1, Tennessee. So we're just kind of like up in the corner there, nobody really pays us any mind. And I don't think Diana had a lot of attention before all of this. But I started calling her regularly, calling her office. And the staff would never be able to answer my questions about a variety of issues that I had, I had questions for. And they would just kind of push me off and say, "Oh, well, we'll pass the message along," or "We're not sure. We haven't talked to her about that." And I'd never get a call, I'd never get an email. I was calling every single day, and I was getting increasingly frustrated that I was getting on the internet and saying, "Hey, we got to call our representatives and hold them accountable." But when I call, they're not answering and I'm getting nothing from it. And that made me very frustrated. And so I thought, okay, I need to escalate this. I need to figure out how to get in touch with my congresswoman. And I saw an event on her Facebook page that she had coming up. It was Coffee with Your Congresswoman. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to go to that. I am going to show up and I'm going to have my questions answered. And I knew that, with the Q&A, it'd be limited time. So I had to pick one thing. And the one issue that I chose was Medicaid, because I know that a lot of people in my area rely on Medicaid. And so I thought that would be a really important issue to bring up. And the fact that right now Congress is trying to pass this budget that, would basically gut Medicaid and quote unquote leave it to the states, which my state doesn't even have funding for that. And they were going to get rid of Medicaid and basically just fund billionaire tax cuts with it. And I wanted to confront her with that information and ask her point blank, is this what you're doing and do you support it? And so I showed up at the town
Which, by the way,
hall.
sounds like a pretty easy question for any
Very.
politician to
Yes,
answer. Just
it
like,
should
no, I
be.
would never do that.
Yes, and so what I did before I went is I actually researched everything about this woman. I read her Wikipedia page. I Googled her name in news and I just read all of her recent interviews in the news and studied the things that she was saying in public. And I saw that she was going around saying that 60% of people on Medicaid aren't eligible to be on it, which is crazy because like half of people on Medicaid are kids. So I thought this was such a wild thing she was saying with no proof at all. And I did the research and found out that it's so far from the truth. So I wrote down the facts. I had this handwritten piece of paper with all of my facts on it. And I was just going to, I was going to bring it up during the Q&A. And when I got there, I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't know if there would be a lot of people there, but I showed up. I was the first person there, first person in line. And then I see the line just is like going around the building and the parking lot, and there's protesters outside. It was quite an event. And it, it got rowdy.
You found your people. By the way,
Mhm.
one person points out really quick, I really appreciate it, Kristi. I'm also in Tennessee, and you've inspired me to get more politically active. I had
Yay!
planned on checking out for 4 years, so it's working. So that's great.
That is the goal. I also planned on checking out I told my husband before the election, I said, we are not fighting. We are not doing anything. We're not making noise. We're going to get a camper van and move out west and we're just going to like hide. And then the election happened and I was like, oh no, I'm ready to fight.
Yeah. So you get to this event. There are other people like you there who are pissed
Yes.
off. And what happens when you actually go in there and get to listen to what she's saying?
So we get in and it is packed. Like there isn't an empty seat in the entire place. There was a couple hundred people there probably. There were people standing in the back, and there were, I think it was split evenly. Half people that were there probably supported her, and half the people didn't. I even think maybe there were more people that didn't support her, but that's just me guessing. I sat right at the front and I had every intention of just keeping my cool, being calm, waiting for my time to ask questions. But I had never been to one of these, so I didn't know how it was going to go. And she started the entire thing with a prayer, like a Christian prayer. And that was really strange. And I didn't like it.
Well, I mean, this
And
was a church service, so yeah.
Basically, yeah, she thought it was. And so, yeah, she starts with this prayer, and I stayed seated through it with two others beside me. They were also seated. And then after that, she starts the whole meeting by saying, I see lots of protesters, and we're going to set ground rules, and you have to be respectful. Like, almost like we were in kindergarten, I'm going to set the rules for how this is going to go. And I was just sitting there thinking, this is weird. You're a representative. You work for us. How are you going to get up there and talk about ground rules? But then she went into this question that it's been viral all over national news, this clip of her saying there's been a mandate by the American people to the president. Is there not? And everybody, the whole room just goes, "No." And she's like, I don't think she was expecting that at all. But
Right. Even if Trump won the election and got the votes, that didn't necessarily mean there was a mandate
a
to destroy
mandate.
Medicaid, to get rid of everything, to destroy the
Exactly.
national parks, whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, we just, no, she asked again, which was very brave. She's like, "Oh, there's not been a mandate." And we're all like, "No." And then she goes, "Well, listen, this is the second reddest district in the entire United States. You are God fearing, freedom loving patriots." And I spoke up kind of loudly and I said, "Nope, no, I'm not. I am I'm not a God-fearing patriot. Sorry." And when I said that, she goes, "Well, you raise your hand if you are," and looked around the room and some people raised their hand. And that, I think it was in that moment I realized, "Oh, this is not going to go in a nice way. Like this is not this
You
is going to
played
be so
by her
different than I thought it
rules.
was going to be."
At
Yeah.
that point, you realize, oh, we're making the news tonight.
Yes, yes, exactly. I mean, I filmed the entire thing and, other people were filming, but I know that I stuck out like a sore thumb. I was a lot younger than most people there, probably one of the youngest people there. I had big holes in my jeans and I had my camera out, so
The devil horns didn't help. Why
I
did you
was
wear
wearing
that?
red.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I stuck out,
And all
but
you did, to be clear, is say, no, I'm not a God fearing member of your
exactly.
constituency.
Exactly. And I think in the moment I thought, well, maybe I should have just kept quiet. But I was like, I think that's the moment that I realized, wait, I am way more in control of this situation, or at least I should be, and I have a right to use my voice. It's literally my right.
She works for
So
you.
exactly. Exactly. Like a lot of people see them as our authority. And, even people in the comments on that video were like, "Oh, well, you should have listened. You should have been respectful." And I'm like, respect is earned, and she is not respecting us. And so, the whole thing, it was an hour and a half. It was very long. And she spent the entire time just lying. She was reading from this binder that, I think was just fed to her from the Trump administration. She didn't even have her own talking points. She was just kind of flipping through it, reading talking points, and the crowd was just giving it to her. And she kept having to, come back at us, be respectful. And I was pretty loud. I was no louder than anybody else, but I was pretty loud. And there were a couple times throughout it that the staff tried to make me leave. At one point, a lady came up and she's like, "You need to get out of here." And I wouldn't, because what are you going to do? And she's like, "This is your last chance." And then another staff member walked over and put his hand on my shoulder and said, "This is not an open forum." So they were very much continuing to come to me and try to like get me to be quiet. But what's funny is when they would do that, there would be all these people around me that were yelling out. And so I'd be like, "Are you going to take them out?" And they would just be like, "You need to be quiet." So I think they just really didn't like it because when I yelled out, I didn't do so to be disruptive. I did so to fact check her. I knew
Mhm.
that she was going to lie. And so every time she lied, I yelled out a fact check. Like when she said, She talks about work requirements for Medicaid and how, oh, we just got to get people to work on Medicaid. People aren't working. And I said 64% of people on Medicaid are working, and the rest fall under the exemptions that are allowed.
They can't work.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and, she didn't, and that's actually when I said that, the staff came over and told me it's not an open forum, and so it wasn't like I wasn't cussing, I wasn't insulting, I wasn't threatening, I was just yelling out facts, basically just fact checking her the entire time. And, they didn't like that, and then, we get to the end, and I think by the end, everybody was just so tired of it. A lot of people had left, because when I got taken out, there were some empty seats there and a lot of protesters outside, so I think people were just sick of it, and they just left, but I was
So
determined.
why did they end up taking you out? Because at some point, too many facts.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually have yet to go to the Sullivan County, Sheriff's Office, but I plan to, I just haven't had the time, but, I at the end, it was the last question, and she had not answered anybody's real questions. People had questions about the SAVE Act. I had question about Medicaid, and didn't answer those. And it came to the last question, and the question was about like women and men and women's sports, culture war stuff. And she said biologically you're born a man or a woman, and that's my brain lit up, and I just got up and I said, "No, nope, intersex people exist." And I said it a few times, and then I started asking. I said, "Do intersex people exist?" And she's like, "Ma'am, I'm not going to have this with you. I'm not having this conversation." And I just kept repeating the question over and over again. And I think it was just I was so tired of being lied to. I was sick of the situation, and I was sick of her getting up there and just saying things that weren't true. And, I think a lot of people thought that I was trying to engage in a culture war, and to me, it had nothing to do with culture wars, gender identity, anything like that. It was really just, you're lying, and I'm going to correct you and call you out on it.
And if they're doing like a town hall, I mean, I don't care if you call it a coffee or whatever they said, but it is not meant to be a one-way forum of information. It's supposed to be a discussion. And if one person is lying the whole time, we can't have a conversation about that stuff.
Exactly. And it's so strange. I really do think she showed up thinking she was just going to tell us how it was, because she said, "I came here to inform you, and you have to listen to me." She literally said that, "You have to listen to me." And so in her mind, she was there to tell us how things were going to go and what was going on, and give us the facts. But none of it was factual. It was all, I mean, I had researched all of this prior. I knew that she was lying. So it's crazy that she thought that she could show up and do that. I assumed she was showing up and we were all just going to ask questions the whole time. But she only gave us about maybe 20 minutes or so for questions before she shut it all down.
And so they took you out of there.
They
And
did.
I'm kind of curious, given your background as someone who was raised Southern Baptist and maybe taught, hey, women are supposed to keep silent in the church. I'm wondering what you think of yourself turning into this person who is like going from mindful and demure to someone who is getting kicked out of a town hall meeting for challenging a Republican for lying to you. That seems like a really awesome, inspiring shift.
It's a big shift. I've had, a lot of personal shifts in the last 6 months or so, and so that probably has a lot to do with it. And it's funny because I have been preaching calmness on my channel for a long time. Calmness, unity, we have to be calm and not reactive. But in that situation, and I've clarified this on my channel, I think we do need to be calm about our information. We need to try to have good conversation, productive conversations with our fellow Americans. But I mean, I truly believe we are experiencing an extremely hostile government takeover. And I'm not ready to play nice with those that are participating and perpetuating it and supporting it. And Diana is. And so I
I mean, one
yeah,
thing that's amazing to me is I hope more people do that in Republican districts if their representatives are brave enough to even show their faces in public. What they need to be met with is that sort of pushback. And I
yes.
hope that if you are raising your voice and saying, you're lying to us, here's what the facts are, I would hope everyone around you is backing you up on that as well and not letting you take the hit for what everyone is thinking anyway.
Yeah, we live, I mean, I think just our culture and our society is very much, they've kind of primed us to be calm and nice and respectful in the face of absolute oppression. And I just don't think that's right. And it's taken a lot for me to kind of step out of, oh, well, what are people going to think of me? And is this the right thing? Am I reacting wrong? And then step into, I know that this is wrong. I know this in my heart that what they're doing is not right. And I have to stand up for it. And I have to use my voice. And it might take me getting loud. And after I left on the way home, actually, the police, they pulled me out. I wouldn't get up out of my seat because I just didn't know how to react. I didn't even know if they could kick me out. And so when they grabbed me and pulled me out, I went to the parking lot and I kind of panicked for a minute because I've never had that happen before. And I got a lot of support from people outside. And then on the drive home, I just felt very I almost felt like I did something wrong. Like I was kind of racking my brain. I'm like, did I do something wrong? Did I make a mistake? Did I
I wonder
embarrass myself?
I wonder how much of that is religious, the pushing back against authority, and you should feel guilty about doing that. How dare you?
I think so. I think, I always it's hard to overcome those. I feel like deconstruction is a lifelong battle, so you're always going to have those little things inside, those little parts of you that kind of speak up and they're like, "Hey, wait a minute, you're not supposed to do this." And I didn't know how my audience would react. When I posted it, I was very hesitant. I was like, I don't know. What if I post this and everybody is like, "You're crazy. Why did you do that?"
There are ways to
And
challenge your congresswoman, and this
right,
ain't it.
respectfully, right, exactly, and so I really didn't know what to expect, and then I posted it and it, like, popped off, and,
Because I
every
think people want to see anyone pushing back. And what's surprising
exactly,
to me, not just you, but I don't know why more elected Democrats are not pushing back as hard as you are, because they have protections that you don't necessarily have and a
yes,
platform that you don't necessarily have. But that's the thing. Like when AOC or whoever it is pushes back against that stuff, I don't get why, even politically, strategically, don't people see that this is good branding? This is good for your political future, pushing back in the best possible way. Um, it just strikes me. I'm glad to see more Democrats saying, hey, you know what? If too many Republicans are not holding any more town halls because they don't want what happened to Diana to happen to them, they don't want to be confronted by their constituents. Fine. Democrats should start having meetings in their
mhm.
districts and saying, all right, they won't talk to you, but we will. And we'll tell you why the person you voted for is horrible. Like, that just sounds smart to me. I don't get why people are, especially when you're in the business of politics, why people are hesitant to push back like that.
Yeah, I struggle with it a lot because, when it's one person that's just screaming in the corner, they look like a crazy person. When it's a whole mob of people, doing it, that is democracy. That is us using our collective voice to, r you know, uh, petition the government for redress of grievances. And so my goal has been to practice what I preach, to walk the walk, and to get out there and fight the fight, and no matter what that costs. And I was hoping, I'm still hoping that by doing so, I will inspire other people to do the same thing because we need everyday average people getting out there and making some noise and getting rowdy and putting the heat and the pressure on our representatives. And I'm very conflicted with my thoughts on Democratic representatives. I think on one hand, they are just failing miserably. They're not fighting enough for us. But on the other hand, I also know that a lot of Americans are also not fighting. And it is our duty and our responsibility as citizens to preserve our future. It's supposed to be a type of democracy. It's supposed to be in our hands. And a lot of people just don't feel like they have power. So they don't use their voice. They think a protest is pointless. They think calling their representatives is pointless. And I'm a very determined person. So when I say you need to call your representatives, and people say it's pointless, and then I call my representative and she doesn't answer, or I don't get a call back, I'm like, okay, I have to do something. I've got to make this work. I've got to get creative or whatever. So I just was hoping to like inspire more people. And it's really hard to get people to participate in protest, in, anything that looks or appears to be not socially acceptable, not nice or respectful enough. And there's a lot of things that you can do to put the heat on them that would work, but we need enough people to do that. I would love to get a giant protest of hundreds of people in my town to march up to Diana's office and say, "We demand you to come out and talk to us." Recently, we had a protest in my town. There was about 30 of us, and they called ahead of time to make appointments with the staff so that we could all go in groups and talk to them. We showed up for the protest. They locked the doors and told us that we had no appointment and that they wouldn't be letting us in because it was a safety concern. So they are getting scared, but we need numbers. We need more people. And I think that if we had more American citizens just stepping outside of their comfort zone and doing a little bit more, or maybe doing a lot more, that our representatives would feel like they have the backing of the American people. But there's only so much they can do on their own. It's like, yeah, they can get up and they can shout and yell, or they might, and they might all get imprisoned by the administration, and then we don't have representatives. So they need us behind them, and they need us putting the heat on the Republican representatives. They need us supporting our Democratic representatives, and actually showing that the American people have a problem with this. And I just don't think enough people have woken up yet to how bad things are and could get in the future.
I feel like that is slowly starting to happen where
It
more
is, yeah.
people are more willing to protest, push back in any way. But even if people are unable to protest in person or they're scared of doing it, I hope the one takeaway is everyone has some power here. If you can't
Everyone.
show up in person, you can
Mhm.
support candidates who are doing that work. You can donate money, you can donate time. You can write postcards for the local elections. You can run for office. I mean, there's so many ways to push back in some way.
Yep.
And I mean, I've seen a lot more people doing it locally as well, which is exciting to see.
Mhm.